Hey there, welcome to another episode of PhysicianEstate podcast. This is your host Dr. Harsha Mule. I am operator and owner of PhysicianEstate platform. I am podcasting to you today from Kansas City, Missouri. PhysicianEstate is a physician-owned and physician-operated platform directed towards doctors in USA. We provide free real estate resources and investment opportunities to physicians. We facilitate physicians to make wealth and keep wealth. You are currently listening to podcast 10 of PhysicianEstate. In this episode, you will learn about why real estate syndication investments are ideal for physicians. In other words, it's a common physician's dilemma. I have $50,000 to invest. What type of real estate do I buy with it? Or in general, where do I invest in it? Physicians in USA do make a decent living in exchange for hundreds of hours they dedicate to the healthcare community. We are usually recognized as lavish spenders on lifestyle-related expenses. Not always, though. There are a few physicians, however, who are keen on investing in order to grow their assets and net worth. Let's talk about a mock situation. Let us assume I have $50,000 and I do not feel like spending this money on liabilities like cars, watches, etc. I want to invest this money somewhere, buy assets, and grow my net worth. Usual options are to invest the money in either the stock market, real estate, collectibles, cryptocurrencies, etc. Well, why not the stock market? I already have all my retirement account money, 401ks and other retirement accounts in the stock market. I feel like the stock market is at an all-time high, hence I do not want any further exposure or investment into the stock market. I would like to diversify my portfolio. If that's the case, why not collectibles and cryptocurrencies? Well, I'm not feeling lucky. Also, I have minimal understanding of these assets and how they are valued. I want my investments to be reasonably safe. After all, this is my hard-earned money. Not interested? No, thank you. That leaves us with real estate investment being a time-tested, dependable investment option. Well, if real estate is that good, what type of real estate do I buy? There are multiple ways you can invest in real estate properties. Real estate investment can broadly be categorized into two types based on the level of your involvement, either active investments or passive investments. Let's first talk about active real estate investments. These can be divided into single-family homes or commercial properties. In a single-family home, investor buys a single-family home by himself or herself, while in a commercial property, investor buys a small commercial property by himself or herself. Now let's talk about passive real estate investments. We'll talk about syndications and real estate investment trusts, which are both considered passive investments. In syndications, a group of investors, one of them is called a sponsor. This is the one who creates and manages the project. So a group of investors pool their money and buy a commercial property and take up a property development. Sponsor manages the property. Rest of the investors are passively investing and own a part of the property. Now going to REITs. REITs are also called real estate investment trusts. Wall Street investment firms buy and sell large multi-million-dollar properties. Investors just own a stock in these humongous companies, but they do not typically own a physical piece of property. This is similar to owning a stock in any other tech company on Wall Street. For a second, let's take a pause from real estate syndication or real estate investments and talk about a typical doctor's lifestyle and time commitments of a doctor. In order to understand which type of real estate investments are better fit for physicians, it is important to understand a physician's typical commitments. A typical physician, in my opinion, spends more than 50 to 60 hours per week at work, sometimes more. Remainder of the time is dedicated to family, friends, relaxing, travel, etc. Essentially, there is not much time left to be actively managing an investment. Of course, there are exceptions. You'd rather spend that time playing with your kids or traveling or whatever it is that makes you feel good. A typical physician just has enough time to do some basic research on investments and make some phone calls. No more, no less. Now, let's try to make a selection. Advantages of real estate investments for physicians. First, let's talk about active investments. When you buy a single-family home or a small commercial property and you are the sole owner of the property, You get to keep all the income and you are the only person paying for any property-related expenses. You get to enjoy tax benefits from real estate-related tax benefits. This also means that you're signing up for labor-intense property management, spending a lot of time managing the property despite having a property manager. There is always a feeling of carrying heavy weight on your shoulders, always that gnawing feeling in the brain space that can add up to your stress levels. Hence, unless I know that the property is in a really good neighborhood and won't have any maintenance issues, I usually try to stay away from these sort of investments that require my ongoing active supervision. The only time these deals make sense is when you can buy a property in a buyer's market and if there is a value-add opportunity that can help you build some sweat equity. Now let's talk about syndication deals. A group of investors pool their money and buy a relatively large commercial real estate project managed and sourced by a sponsor. Sponsor is a person who finds the project, does all the heavy lifting, renovates it, manages it, and everything else. My role in syndications is being a passive investor. Syndications, in my opinion, are a partially passive investment, not completely passive. And I say this because initial due diligence is required prior to investing in a syndication. Initial work that I need to do before I invest is sponsor related and property related. First, sponsor related. I vet the sponsor, I check if the sponsor has a good track record, evaluate the sponsor's prior projects, talk to previous investors that work with the sponsor. Now, property related. I evaluate the location of the property, the purpose of the property, underwriting of the operating agreement or PPM. I make sure the numbers projected by the sponsors make sense and that he or her has an experienced real estate professional look at the entire project to make sure there are no red flags. And then I hire a real estate attorney to review the agreement. After this due diligence is done initially, syndication deals are very much a passive investment. You make good profits, and another advantage is that there are tax benefits with syndications. Depreciation is passed on to investors, prorated to the individual equity ownership. Time to talk about REITs, R-E-I-T-S. This is Wall Street or institutional firm-run fund that buys, manages, and sells multi-million-dollar real estate properties. You are not physically owning a property when you invest in these. It is more like buying a stock that Wall Street is controlling, not you. They have more overhead fee compared to syndications. You do not usually know the specific details of operations. A thoroughly researched and carefully selected syndication deal probably pays you better than REITs. REITs do not offer real estate-related tax benefits. Dividends are taxed as ordinary income. There is no depreciation benefits. You have no control over what REIT does with purchasing or selling properties, etc. Your investment philosophy may not align with that of the REITs. REITs experience volatility related to market influencing factors. It has happened in the past that the REITs are influenced by stock market fluctuations as opposed to the value of the hard assets that you own. It is easier to liquidate and pull money out of your REITs as opposed to other syndication investments. Let's talk about profits. The amount of returns you make on each of these real estate investment vehicles, as expected, depends on multiple factors. There are just too many variables to take into account, so a simple head-to-head comparison is impossible. You have to look at them individually to their merit and make a decision. I'm not going to sit here and give you a blank statement saying one type of investments makes more than the other. If it were that easy, everybody, including myself, would have already invested in that particular real estate asset. As physicians, we have to remember that the returns and/or profits should not be the only criteria that make you invest in one type of real estate versus another. Our time constraints, our limited real estate related knowledge and/or skill set, and our risk tolerance should all be taken into account when making this decision. In conclusion to this topic, overall, I have a busy work schedule just like thousands of other physicians. I would like to own a piece of property, but I do not want the hassle of managing it. I want profits from it, but I also want tax benefits from depreciation. I believe that I just have enough time to perform my initial due diligence on picking the right sponsor and the right property, but after that, I want to be a completely passive investor. That pretty much leaves me with syndication deals as the most appropriate real estate investment vehicle, taking into account my work-life balance. In order to look at the direct comparison table of several forms of real estate investments, please look at Table 1 of the blog post, Why are Real Estate Syndication Investments Ideal for Physician? You will find this blog post in PhysicianEstate.com. Well, that brings us to the end of this topic. Thank you for listening to this episode of Physician Estate Podcast. In the next episode, you will learn about how to use retirement accounts to fund a real estate deal. To receive more information on real estate resources for physicians and to get updates on real estate investment opportunities with Physician Estate, please subscribe to our newsletter at PhysicianEstate.com. Do not forget to take advantage of our 2 new eBooks, ABCs of Real Estate Syndication and How to Avoid Medical Malpractice Lawsuits. Signing off for now, this is your host, Dr. Harsha Mule. Until next time, make wealth and keep wealth. Disclaimer: I am not a legal advisor or investment advisor. The content in this podcast is not investment advice. This is my personal blog, and all the content found here is for informational, entertainment, or educational purposes only. It should not be construed as personal investment advice.